Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Naked Sports with Cari Champion. I thank you all for being here. I believe that I was on a vacation, at least that was in my mind, and I was in another country enjoying myself. And then, of course, what we should never do is check our phones. And I'm on the phone and I'm seeing what's happening in my hometown in LA. And I'm thinking, this is absolutely wild. Why is this even happening? But I'm also thinking, I've seen this before. I've seen this in other countries where they have dictators. I've seen this before when we watch television movies. I've seen this before when I watch The Handmaid's Tale. Don't watch it if you don't want to be triggered. And so what's happening in LA right now, and as other protests spread against ICE in other countries, it's become really tragic to see mothers being torn apart from their children, protesters who are doing it in peace, minding their own business, being bullied and or hit and are shoved and or arrested by officers, National Guard. Sometimes you can't tell the difference between the two because simply it just looks like people are being disturbed when they are exercising their right as a citizen of the United States to protest. That is your right to do so. You may not like it, but that is a right, a fundamental right that we have governed in our Constitution. But today I was reading, as I prepared to record this podcast, today I was reading that there are more U.S. troops right now in this moment in LA than there are in Iraq and Syria combined. The Pentagon projects that the troops that are in Los Angeles, that deployment of troops that came to Los Angeles to protect and serve because it was apparently in some's eyes violent, and they needed to call in these troops that usually go overseas to fight wars for us. They're now fighting your next door neighbor. You know how much that costs? $134 million. And I thought we were a country that needed to save money. I thought that's why Elon was a part of Doge. I thought that people were figuring out ways to save money. You send a handful of Marines, 700 on standby, latest numbers, to come to Los Angeles and protect and serve what? I do not know, because those streets are empty. I'm from LA, so let me give you by design what downtown Los Angeles looks like. Downtown Los Angeles is like a downtown of any big top 10 city. And you know, downtown doesn't really describe where most people live. It isn't, except for New York. New York has the, from my understanding, the exception to this rule. Downtown Los Angeles isn't a hubbub. It isn't where everything is happening. There aren't many people who live in that community in terms of it's not the space where you will see people congregating and going. It's a small area. I say it's a small area because it doesn't seem to fit the response. It's like I tell you I have a boo-boo, I cut myself, and then you decide to give me a cast. I tell you that I slipped on the street, and then you block off the entire street because you're like, no one can walk on the street because it's a dangerous street. I tell you, I want a whisper of orange juice in my mimosa, and you pour me a full glass without the champagne. It's too much. It's too extreme. The military currently has more boots on the ground in Los Angeles than in two Middle Eastern countries, including one the United States was at war with. We're talking about Iraq. President Trump has deployed about 4,800 activated National Guard and Marine troops combined to Los Angeles amid the ICE immigration protests in the city. The U.S. has 2,500 troops in Iraq to this date, 1,500 in Syria. And this was all coming from ABC News. So in short, there are more troops in LA than there are in Syria, where they're looking for ISIS, and then there are in Iraq, where we have already pledged our commitment to keep that entire country safe. Imagine that. Imagine that. Where is the war on terrorism? It's definitely not happening in a small section of Los Angeles known as the downtown LA area where protests are happening. And now those protests are starting to spread in other countries. And people are upset.
I'm scared. Don't let me go. And I have to because the county of LA said I had to. ICE is now removing undocumented foster children from their foster homes. Removing foster children from their foster homes for deportation. Y'all, I've been working in the foster care system for 28 years. I'm a former foster mom, and I adopted 4 children from foster care and fostered many others. And I have represented hundreds of children who are in foster care. And one thing all of these children have in common is they have all been through trauma to one degree or another. We are taking children who have already been through trauma and removing them from foster homes for deportation. There will be a reckoning for this in this life or the next.
I think something really powerful is coming from this moment. And I know that some of you only want to hear about sports. You don't want to hear about politics, but this affects everyone, and we can't keep our head down, and we can't ignore it, and we can't scroll past it, and we can't say it's not happening, because it will come to your doorstep in some form or fashion. I am born and raised. I am not worried about ICE arresting me. But if in fact they got jiggy, if they got a little freakish with it, they could, if they wanted to, just to give me a hard time, just to give you a hard time. They can do whatever they want to do. That is the point. That's why people are protesting. There needs to be some sort of reform, in my opinion. You can't just run out here and just arrest anyone because you feel like it or maybe they look like it. What is going on? And right now, while they're only attacking people in certain Latin communities, let them, you know where they're headed next. I don't even have to tell you. I don't even have to tell you who's next. You already know who's next. You're not safe just because you're not an immigrant of the Latin region. You're not safe. No one is really truly safe, which is why people are protesting. Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom with the podcast. I'll say this to you, sir. I have criticized you before in the past because you go back and forth and back. And it feels like to me, a lot of your stances come from an area where you were trying to gather favor as opposed to just saying what you truly feel. As someone who gives opinions on CNN, I understand how that is. I understand when you get nervous, when you stand 10 toes down on what you believe and you know it could affect your bottom line. For you, in that case, it could be a loss of constituents. It could be a loss of perhaps a presidential bid because you think you want it. Your stakes are higher. But for so long, it felt as if you were playing a game. Like you were catching on to fire when it came to the NIL deals in California and you were sitting with LeBron. It felt like, oh, let me hang out with these people. And then you did the podcast and I'm like, well, what's going on? And then you changed your mind on, trans kids in sports, girls sports more specifically. All of that to me made me think I didn't know really where you stood. I'm not criticizing you on your choices. I'm criticizing you on what seemed like your inability to stay focused. But when I tell you, I have a whole new respect for you in this moment because of the way in which you handled Donald Trump, our current president, and what you said about him.
I said he never once brought up the National Guard. He's a stone-cold liar. He said he did. Stone-cold liar. Never did. It was a very civil conversation. I've always wanted to approach engagement with the President of the United States in a respectful and responsible way. But there's no working with the President. There's only working for him. And I will never work for Donald Trump.
Powerful. He's upset. And I'm sure that what we are going to see, and I often have said this about journalism, these are war times. You may not think this is wartime, but these are war times. Whenever troops are being deployed on any city street to keep the peace, while the governor did not ask for it, no one else called for it, because usually that is the protocol. The last time that this happened, the last time that the President of the United States, I'll give you three instances, big ones. When the President of the United States said, listen, I don't like what's going on over there in that state, and I am now going to deploy the National Guard. There are 3 instances, and my homegirl Katie Couric talked about them on her podcast, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. One of which was when they needed to desegregate schools What? In Alabama? Are you telling me that this rises to the occasion of desegregation? Take a listen.
Historically, National Guard troops are brought to manage a situation at the request of the state's governor. For example, following the riots in South Central LA after all 4 officers were acquitted in the videotape beating of Rodney King, a state of emergency was declared, and Governor Pete Wilson requested that President George Herbert Walker Bush deploy National Guard troops. This time, the National Guard was sent in without any request by Governor Gavin Newsom, who claimed their presence would, quote, be purposefully inflammatory and only escalate tensions. Now, Governor Newsom is suing President Trump for calling in the Guard and deploying them on the streets of LA. Now, the National Guard has been deployed in other situations without the consent of the governor. In 1957, President Eisenhower sent them to Little Rock, Arkansas to ensure that Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruling, which paved the way to school desegregation, was enforced. In 1963, President Kennedy federalized the Guard after Alabama Governor George Wallace attempted to block the entrance of the University of Alabama. President Lyndon Baines Johnson called in the National Guard to protect civil rights demonstrators during the march between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. In other words, this is the first time since 1965 that the National Guard has been deployed without the knowledge or approval of a state's governor. By the way, as of this afternoon, 300 National Guard troops are currently in Los Angeles, and now we're just learning they're sending in the Marines. According to the Wall Street Journal, roughly 500 Marines are deploying to Los Angeles to protect federal buildings and personnel in the wake of weekend protests over immigration that have already led President Trump to federalize National Guard troops. The troops are expected to arrive as soon as tonight, and they will be under the U.S. Northern Command, which is responsible for U.S. military operations in North America. This whole thing is getting weirder and weirder, and according to a lot of people, pretty damn scary.
And so because I feel that we are at war within this country, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised, and I've been saying this for years, not years, I've been saying this for the last year or so. I wouldn't be surprised if civil war broke out. This is what we're watching right now. I need you to understand is to me the equivalent of a very bad movie that does not end well, but also in real time, what's happening is so shocking because it's never happened to us in recent memory in this country, and people don't know how to respond. Which is why Gavin Newsom is like, I'm going to sue Trump. I don't know what that's going to do, but let me see. Let me stop it in the courts. Let me prolong this process. But what we're going to start seeing, outside of really great journalism and people sticking to the truth and saying what they feel, what we're also going to see in real time is real leaders step up. And I don't necessarily know if Governor Newsom is that real leader, but we're going to see the current administration pressure some of these states that don't agree with the administration, Donald Trump. We're going to see people legitimately start to step up, and we're going to see our leaders, and we're going to see our warriors, and we're going to see our protectors. And that is what happens in times like this. Everything has to, and not in any type of literal terms, because I don't want this to happen, but everything has to burn down to the ground so it can be rebuilt. So people can come out new and fresh, so that we can find new leaders, so that we can find new voices, and that we can really, truly come together and understand what it means to be in a situation where you have no absolute control, no sovereignty over yourself. We're so used to Americans coming and going as we please. These certain small liberties are being taken away every single day. And obviously, if you even are a legal citizen of this country and your parents came here from another country and you were born here, or your parents are now legal citizens and they got their citizenship, you're feeling nervous. I don't know much about it because I was born and raised, so it doesn't, quote unquote, affect me in this moment. But it can and it will. It can and it will. And so that is why I really, truly, look, I'm here for the best of times. I love to laugh and giggle with the best of them. But I need people to pay attention to what's happening, because it's just the beginning. And we've been saying that, but it's just the beginning. I find it really interesting that on January 6th, during the insurrection, where were the troops? Where were the National Guards? I saw video of police officers bludgeoned, not to death, but beat. People died, and it was no big deal. Really? Really? Y'all don't think this is crazy? Please stop having short memories. What is happening right now is a state of emergency, and we have to be on guard. We really, truly do. I hate to only talk about the politics of it all, but I when I got off of vacation and I'm watching these images, I'm like, am I coming to a third world country as I return back home? Am I coming back home to a dictatorship where I had just left a dictatorship? Am I coming back home to that? What's happening around the world? People are familiar with this in other countries. We're very spoiled, I think, here. And so talking just to some people, even in my travels, they understand what's happening. They describe it in such an elegant way that makes it seem like, yeah, it just happens all the time. Governments topple all the time. People get upset with the government and fight back all the time. People demand more all the time. It's not always stability and chaos, and that is what's happening in real time. We're watching whatever we thought, whatever illusion of stability that we had in this country disappear. I don't want to be so dramatic, but I do want you to pay attention. PSA, public service announcement. It's up to us, y'all, to at least be informed. You ain't have to talk about it at work. You don't have to talk about it with Sally next door, but we do have to be informed. Now, with that said, I got to move on to one interesting take or a replay. I want to know what y'all think about Tyrese Halliburton. By the time you hear this, we're deep into the finals. Currently 2-1. That man shut down an entire garden, Madison Square Garden. That man got his dad reinstated so his dad could watch the games again. That man's voice changes mid-sentence 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Take a listen.
Granted, we didn't make shots. Make or miss league. We shot 20% from. Yeah, we gotta shoot better from. We'll shoot better. That's not us. But you got to find ways to win, and we just couldn't do that today. So we'll see where we can get better. Watch film and be ready to go for game 4.
But that man might be that man. Stephen A. Smith is like, nah, he's not a superstar. Is it because he's light-skinned? Is that it? When's the last time we call a light-skinned player a superstar? Steph Curry was my light skin. I don't know what's going on. Is it because he wears odd clothes during the tunnel? I don't know. None of those things bother me. I don't mind his odd clothes. I don't mind his busboy suits. And I don't even mind his predilection to play in the snow. I don't even mind that. That doesn't even bother me. None of that bothers me because I think he is a really, really great player. And I don't know if he can be a bona fide superstar yet, but I'm telling you, he's climbing up. He's getting so much respect. And people are going to have to get over the fact that he's light-skinned. Y'all so mean to these light-skinned men. I don't like it. They can play basketball. Steph showed y'all that. Let a new Steph live. So let him be the great light-skinned Steph if he needs to be. But if I had to be honest with you, I think the Pacers might win it all. New York should love that too, but I think the Pacers might win it all. I love SGA. I thought SGA was the man. I wanted him to win it all because he is so deserving. Yes, deserving of MVP, deserving of I just like everything about him. I rock with him. You know what I mean? But that Pacers team is deep. They got player after player after player after player after player after player after player. And then Tyrese was out here just like, his name ain't Tyrese. Let's just call him Hallie. He's running around here being real good. It's as simple as that. I'm giving it to him. He will be the finals MVP. The Pacers will win it. It will be a great series because these two teams are amazing. OKC deserves this moment as well. That's a great team, a great run organization. What we're looking at, really, honestly, the take here is that these are the new superstars of the NBA. As Steph Curry and LeBron James and James Harden and Kevin Durant and the OGs start to see the sunset rising really quick, or the sun setting really quick on their careers, these guys are rising in real time. Like, these are the new faces of the NBA, and the NBA could do themselves a favor and get more storylines. Let it get ugly. Let them get mean. Let people not like each other. Let's create rivalries. People will be locked in, and they'll pass the torch appropriately. If you all don't mind, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about Ananda Lewis. I'm sure you all have heard by now that she passed away of stage 4 breast cancer, and she was 52 years old. And I want to tell you that I had Jesse Collins on the show, the executive producer of the BET Awards, and I asked him what Teen Summit meant to him. What was it? What did it stand for? What was its legacy? And he mentioned that Teen Summit was a place where people who were burgeoning adults had real issues, real questions, and they wanted to talk it out, and they wanted to share what they were feeling. I haven't seen programming like that ever. I would love to see a program that is popular, cultural, and it meets at the intersection of all of the ideals of what we like to discuss: sports, culture, entertainment, politics, you go on. Teen Summit did that, and it gave a lot of teenagers a voice, or it helped them find their voice, or it told a lot of kids that your opinion does matter. And one of the great hosts of that show, Ananda Lewis, was mentioned here on Naked Sports just not that long ago, as Jesse talked about this huge anniversary show of BET, and the show was amazing. And when they were doing the reunions, people were very, very, it took us back. People were very happy. It made you nostalgic to see so many people that you grew up with. I'm talking for myself as well. There were a few notables missing, and they had discussed why they missed, but Ananda, I'm sure, they tried to reach out to her, I'm sure. And just days later, after the airing of that show, she passed away. And so for me, Ananda was what could be. As a person who was coming up in this business and wanted to be on air and didn't see myself, to see someone, because I knew at 7 years old that I wanted to make a difference, use my voice, and I didn't know where I would do that. But to see a teenager doing it in such a powerful way, and then leaving and going to MTV and creating her own there as well, powerful. And before I got my first real job, I remember being in LA and seeing Ananda at the Universal Studios Center. It's an area in LA. That's how I'll describe it for you all. And she was walking, and she was on the phone, and she was laughing and talking and joking and just being really amazing. And I wanted to say something to her. She could see, like, we made eye contact and she could see my face. And I was like, I got excited. If you're not watching, I was like, oh my God. And I didn't say anything because I was scared. Didn't want to bother her. That's also LA too. You don't want to bother people. And I remember just thinking, wow, I just saw Ananda Lewis. And over the years, I hadn't had the opportunity to meet her, but so many of my colleagues have, and they all talked to her and they all hung out with her, and they said she was just an amazing soul. And my friend, Kelly Carter, did a story on Ananda, and it was about her fight with breast cancer, when she decided that she was going to fight her way and not the typical way, and why she decided to do that. And I wanted to share just a few minutes with you all, or a few parts of the interview, so you can understand her passion, her zest for life, because she always had such a great personality. She was one of those people that was just TV ready, like she could command the room. And I'm listening to her give this interview with Kelly Carter, arguably knowing that the end was nigh. It was near. It was coming.
I know by 47 I should have had my first mammogram, right? And I didn't do that because I saw my mom do it for 30 years and she still ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. I didn't have the understanding then that I had now.
So I say this to Ananda. Thank you for showing so many brown girls it is possible and there is a way. Thank you for being positive up until the very last moment. You can even go on her IG page and see how positive she was. And then I also just want to thank you for having the courage to be you and do you. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for listening to this edition of Naked Sports. I got some sports in, but the overall message is this. We really, truly, truly need to pay attention to what's happening in this country. You can't ignore what's going to be at your doorstep sooner rather than later. You just can't. It's just that simple. You can catch me on CNN on Friday nights. I will be doing the show there. Or you can see it on my Instagram. Cari Champion is my Instagram. Make sure you just tune in, pay attention, and I'll try to inform you as best I can.